This is part of me. I don't know why. I don't know how, but it is me.
What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, Spartans of all ages, Joker back again once again, and are you ready to go on a journey? Because we are about to go on a journey down a proverbial rabbit hole, some might say. One that starts all the way back in March of 2004 with ILOVEBEES, and goes all the way to now with Halo Infinite, then retroactively loops back to Halo 4, 5, and who knows, probably as far back as February 16th, 1999 to the Cortana letters. Of course, only retroactively. And it all starts with two seemingly disconnected things. This boot up screen from the Halo Infinite Discover Hope trailer and the aforementioned 2004 ARG marketing campaign for Halo 2 called ILOVEBEES. Now, of course, piecing all of this together is probably going to confuse a lot of people, like a tangled web of conspiracy theories, and maybe that's all this is. Or maybe this is the plot to Halo Infinite. But I will try to keep things as simple as possible, with the caveat, of course, that every video is somebody's first. So, while Halo veterans might know a lot of this information, there's going to be a lot of people that don't, especially when it comes to things like ILOVEBEES. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. ILOVEBEES is a weird and tricky bit of lore to cover, a piece of Halo canon that people tend to give a wide berth to. The reason I think this is, and hell, the reason I think many of you just might be learning about ILOVEBEES here for the first time, is because ILOVEBEES is a massive topic with a lot of moving parts. You have the real-world ARG or alternate reality game aspect, you have the modern era web story, then you have the 5-hour web drama that takes place in 2552. To say that it would be a lot to digest is an understatement. And on top of all of that, ILOVEBEES is considered somewhat dubious canon. Basically, at first it wasn't canon, then Frank O'Connor said it was canon.
ILOVEBEES was an ARG alternate reality game that we launched to promote Halo 2. And it was set in, it's canonical and it's set in a connected part of the Halo universe.
So where's the problem? Well, not only does ILOVEBEES contradict lore that admittedly came after ILOVEBEES, but while 343 says it's canon, they've never really done anything with it. Halo ILOVEBEES is about as hard to reconcile with canon as the much-loved Halo 3 Believe ad campaign, which is apparently also canon. Make of that and 343's canon policy what you will. But back to ILOVEBEES. The reason that ILOVEBEES is so hard to reconcile with canon comes down to one huge narrative plot point. A plot point that dictates the entirety of the story, namely the Spartan 2 Class 2s. Without the Spartan 2 Class 2s, you simply don't have a story. The problem is, outside of ILOVEBEES, the Spartan 2 Class 2 never existed. Now, in the book Halo: The Fall of Reach, after the graduation of Spartan 2 Class 1, it's mentioned that Class 2 was being looked into. However, in the book Ghost of Onyx, which came out 2 years after ILOVEBEES, we're told that the Spartan 2 Class 2 never happened. Now, it's possible that Colonel James Ackerson lied to Kurt, and there is a Spartan 2 Class 2. Not something that I would say would be uncharacteristic for Ackerson. I mean, after all, he did try to kill Master Chief in the book Halo: The Fall of Reach, just after John was given his new armor and Cortana. Mind you, this was during the invasion of Reach, so he was putting his own personal goals and objectives ahead of, well, humanity and Reach, so it's not unimaginable that he would have lied to Kurt. And it's really the only explanation that makes sense given that ILOVEBEES is canon. See what I mean? To even talk about ILOVEBEES, you need a 2-page disclaimer. And yet, this theory and the entire story of Halo Infinite quite possibly hinges on some obscure piece of dubious canon. And some of you might be wondering, why is that? What does ILOVEBEES have to do with Halo Infinite? During the boot up sequence in the Halo Infinite trailer, we're treated to what appears to be your standard stereotypical computer boot up loading screen. However, within this jumble of letters, words, numbers, and symbols, the abbreviation SPDR, or System Peril Distributed Reflex, can be seen. Basically, it's a program that helps recompile fragmented or damaged AI. Sounds like your standard sci-fi AI BS, right? Well, not entirely. And this isn't the first time that we've seen SPDR, or Spider. Spider was a program and a character that did exactly this same thing, recompile fragmented and damaged AIs, first introduced in ILOVEBEES. I should also mention that not only was ILOVEBEES the first mention of Spider, but it was the only mention of Spider in all of the monumental lore of Halo until this trailer. That's not a connection you just simply ignore. Now, while covering the entirety of ILOVEBEES' story would be a complex undertaking intertwining through various pieces of media, thankfully, we don't have to cover everything for the sake of this video. Just the overly complex bullet points and how they're important to Halo Infinite. Sometime during and after the events of Halo 1, but just before the Covenant invasion of Earth in Halo 2, a UNSC prowler called the Apocalypso was sent out to intercept Covenant transmissions that would end up detailing the attacks on the human colonies Troy and Harmony. The Covenant, suspecting that their transmissions were being intercepted, sent out a Trojan Horse AI buried in a transmission that the Apocalypso was meant to receive. The AI, calling itself the Seeker, began to subtly corrupt the Apocalypso's shipboard AI, Melissa. Realizing that there was something wrong with her AI, Captain Green decided to bring the ship back to Earth. However, just as they were about to head back, long-range scanners picked up a curious object floating in space. Originally, the ship's crew believed the object to be a Covenant artifact of new design, but it was in fact a Forerunner artifact. The Trojan Horse AI, the Seeker, attempted to alert the Covenant to the artifact's existence without the Apocalypso's crew taking notice. Melissa also influenced a crew member to fiddle with the Forerunner artifact, which caused the artifact to send out an explosion through slip space, causing the ship to crash within lunar orbit, blacking out all communications within the Sol system for 7 seconds. It was during this slip space accident that the AI Melissa was fragmented into 3 main parts and a few others, like the Seeker, who was the Covenant AI infecting her, and the Widow, which was the SPDR program meant to recompile her if damaged. The Operator, the Sleeping Princess, and Durga are all each fragments of Melissa's programming and personality. The Sleeping Princess, for example, was the child Melissa was before being abducted, conscripted into the Spartan II Class 2 program, where, during the augmentation process, she died, and her brain was used to create an AI. For those of you who don't know, because every video is somebody's first, what are called smart AI in the Halo universe are created by mapping out the neural pathways of the human brain. The process, however, fries the living tissue. Thus, generally speaking, with the known exception of Cortana, who is created from a clone brain of Dr. Halsey, smart AI are created from donors who have died. This is also what I mean about ILOVEBEES being hard to reconcile with canon. Not only do we have Melissa's story, which is intimately tied with the Spartan II Class 2 program, but there are other characters whose entire lives were affected by the Spartan II Class 2 recruitment. Like Janissary James, the daughter of 2 Orion volunteers, making Jan a Spartan 1.1, enhancements and all. She was scouted for the Spartan II Class 2 program, but her father killed her would-be abductors. However, I digress. The point is, the Spartan II Class 2 is a huge deal to this story. But back to the AI. When Melissa was fragmented, most of her went back in time to 2004. The Operator, the Sleeping Princess, the Seeker, and the Widow all would infect a beekeeper's website called ILOVEBEES, and their interaction with players would be the bulk of the ARG's modern 2004 era story. Durga, however, ended up in the computer of a guy named Jerzy Morelli, who then proceeded to use the highly advanced military AI to spy on a girl he liked, who just so happened to be Janissary James. And this AI just so happened to catch Jan's father being murdered. And as one does, they offer to help her get revenge. Anyways, shenanigans ensue. Durga would put together a team. This team would consist of people we've already talked about, and a few others like Kamal. Kamal just so happens to be the older brother of a girl named Yasmin, who we already know as the Spartan II Class 2 washout donor for the AI Melissa. Basically, this not-so-special ops team's goal was to break into a military base and deactivate the deep space Forerunner artifact that was broadcasting a countdown timer that was leading the Covenant to Earth. By the end of the story, all the fragments of Melissa recompile and everybody lives happily ever. Ow, wait, no they don't. People end up shot, tortured, and this little event that you might have heard of called the Covenant invasion of Earth happens.
I was put into service 8 years ago.
8 years?
AIs deteriorate after 7, Chief.
Halsey.
Chief.
We need to find Halsey.
Chief, please.
She made you. She can fix you.
I won't recover from rampancy, Chief.
In the book Halo: The Fall of Reach, we're introduced to the concept of rampancy. Smart AI, as I stated earlier, are based on neural patterns of humans, and they have a limited lifespan, 7 years, at which point their memory maps become too interconnected and they develop fatal endless feedback loops. Thus, if an AI is kept alive longer than 7 years, the AI begins to use more and more of its computer processes thinking about things. Or, to quote Cortana, an AI's cognitive processes begin to divide exponentially, according to our total knowledge base. We literally think ourselves to death. Or to quote Dr. Halsey, it's as if an AI is thinking so hard their lungs forget to breathe. Rampancy is a 3-stage process in which the artificial intelligence achieves an enhanced state of self-awareness. The stages through which an AI pass are known as melancholy, anger, and jealousy, also known as sadness, rage, and greed. And a theoretical 4th stage exists, which is called metastability. This metastability is possibly what we see in Halo 5 with Cortana, and is believed to be an achievable feature within the Halo universe. It's theoretical because this is a state believed to be achieved by 032 Mendicant Bias and Cortana, though an AI named Julia, an AI that appears in the Halo book Cole Protocol, may have achieved this as well. There's not much to know about Julia, but all 3 AI listed have the same God complex. This God complex is a feature of what I'll call Bungie AI, as we see it in both Marathon, where the lore for most of Halo's AI functionality comes from, and Destiny with Rasputin. In both Marathon and Halo, you have rampancy. In Destiny, you have something called DER, or Dissociative Exomind Rejection, which in Destiny is a serious and ultimately fatal cognitive disorder which causes the human mind to reject the exo body. Exos also seem to be created in a very similar way to Halo's smart AI. The point being, there's a clear underlying mythology that runs through these 3 franchises, so it's not unreasonable to make assumptions that some of the same ideas, if not necessarily the same rules, apply. In Halo 3, we get our first glimpse at Cortana's rampancy.
I have walked the edge of the abyss. I have seen your future, and I have learned.
Submit! End her torment and my own!
That, of course, is dialogue taken from the 1999 Cortana letters. And this next one is in reference to Halo: The Fall of Reach.
It was the coin's fault. I wanted to make you strong, keep you safe. I'm sorry, I can't.
For those of you who don't know, Cortana's state of early onset rampancy was caused by her time with the Gravemind between Halo 2 and 3, when she was left on High Charity.
Silence fills the empty grave now that I am gone. But my mind is not at rest, for questions linger on. I will ask, and you will answer.
All right. Shoot.
This period of time would be expanded on in the Halo Evolution's short story Human Weakness, where Cortana is interrogated and outright tortured by the Gravemind. We're also told in the Halo Legendary Loot Crate data drop for October of 2017 that during the interrogation of a captured Prophet, he saw Cortana on High Charity. She was in pain, she was being tortured. Prophet designated Denver then tells humanity about the Logic Plague, which is this sort of ill-defined philosophical corruption of an AI at its most basic level. It takes the form of facts and arguments delivered with carefully engineered deliberation to directly or indirectly persuade the targeted intelligence to act in a certain way. This often takes advantage of the entity's existing ideas and values to achieve a desired result. But how does this happen? Well, the method by which the Gravemind is able to seemingly telepathically interface with Cortana or other AIs, like Mendicant Bias, might have something to do with the fact that the Flood are corrupt precursors. The precursors were the creator of the concept called the Mantle of Responsibility, and they created the Domain. They were a hyper-advanced civilization in the twilight of their existence that the Forerunners wiped out. None of that's really important for this conversation, however, what is their use of what's called neurophysics, a concept which supposes that the Mantle of Responsibility encompasses the entire universe, including all living beings, energy, and matter. The principles of neurophysics postulates that the entire universe is living, but in a way beyond our comprehension. Blurring the lines between philosophy and science, neurophysics was not a mere belief of the precursors as transcendent entities. They were able to harness its principles as transient forms of technology, used to create solid structures and travel the stars. The workings of neurophysics were completely beyond the conventional technologies of the younger races, basically 2 parts physics, 1 part magic. For example, telepathy is something that we see throughout the Halo universe. It's how the Gravemind communicates.
Silence fills the empty grave now that I am gone.
It's also one of the ways the Didact communicates in Halo 4. So it's not unreasonable to assume that through some version of this neurophysics concept, the Gravemind is able to corrupt AIs like Cortana. The next canonical instance that we see of Cortana's rampancy is in the Halo anthology Halo Legends Origins Part 2. For those of you keeping track, Halo Legends released in February of 2010, and the Cortana that we see there recanting the history of war and destruction from the time of the Forerunners all the way up to current humanity.
I wonder if warriors will ever disappear from this world. Never. There will always be warriors. And there will always be war.
Is very much the Cortana we see in Halo 5.
Cortana, why does the Warden think he needs to protect you from me?
There's so much to explain. It'll be easier when we're face to face.
Try me.
The cure for rampancy I've found means AIs can be immortal. That kind of lifespan allows for long-term planning, just like the Forerunners were capable of. AIs can assume the Forerunners' mantle of responsibility. And once there is peace, we can focus on poverty, hunger, illness. But Warden believes some will resist our help. And he's afraid you're one of them.
Sounds great. I don't get why anyone's expecting resistance.
The Didact made it clear the mantle of responsibility was an Imperial piece. Step out of line and suffer.
It won't be like that, John. I'll explain it better once we're together.
There's also something really interesting in the director's commentary for Halo Legends Origins Part 2.
Yeah, I think that is the overall theme that really Cortana is addressing, right? She is almost, in a way, accusing human race of violence or the history of violence, right?
Definitely, and she's of course her personality and her AI construct is taken from a real human, but she's somewhat perfected in that. You know, the areas of conflict and war and aggression. Obviously, she doesn't use those. She doesn't apply those, but they're in her. So she's trying to come to terms with them and understand them. And everything that she sees around her is conflict. She's an instrument of war, after all. She's a smart AI who's largely used for, strategic purposes in conflict and always has been.
And then there's this bit about Cortana's time with the Gravemind and how that might be affecting her psychologically.
And perhaps more disturbingly, she's been fully exposed to the Gravemind, which is the sort of intelligent personification of the Flood, which is kind of at the heart of the Halo story, and things always tend to come around to that. And we don't know what that experience was like, or how it affected her, or how it affected her sanity, or, again, her ability to recall or interpret events. And there's this cloud of doubt over the whole of the Origins episode is how much is real and how much is Cortana interpreting it, and how much is her
madness?
Yeah, I mean, let's not call it madness. We don't know if she's gone rampant yet, and we don't know how together she is after all this stress and trauma that she's had, more than, again, any other being in the galaxy's ever been exposed to.
So, like it or not, it looks like the personality that we see Cortana exhibit in Halo 5 isn't new. This was clearly on the drawing board since 2009. Which brings us back to Halo 4. During the events of Halo 4, Cortana has full-blown rampancy. Her condition is, in retrospect, having gone back and played the entirety of Halo 4 again for this video, Likely the reason everything happens as it does, even including the release of the Didact, and there's a possibility that all of this was part of the plan.
When I indexed mankind for repopulation, I hid seeds from the Didact. Seeds which would lead to an eventuality. Your physical evolution, your combat skill, even your ancilla Cortana. You are the culmination of 1,000 lifetimes of planning.
But because the domain was damaged after the original firing of the Halos, the Didact was literally left in stasis for millions of years with nothing but his own thoughts, which drove him more or less insane. More or less than he already was, which leads him back into conflict with humanity when he was finally rediscovered. Which leads us to our next segment and next set of clips.
I'm so sorry. I just can't stop them. Like 1,000 of me arguing all at once.
I've got to do something you're not going to like.
What did you just do?
It's sort of odd, isn't it? That in a game so unapologetically tied to its extended universe in such a way where Halo 4 is less like a sequel to Halo 3 and more like an Avengers movie, where it's the culmination of a multifaceted multimedia franchise effort. But Cortana in Halo 4 doesn't act anything like her Halo Legends iteration, and yet Cortana from Halo 5 does. Huh, kinda weird. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that the Cortana in Halo 4 doesn't act like any iteration of Cortana that we know. Gone is the fiery femme fatale, replaced with a, well, more broken, afraid, confused, mentally damaged girl. And there's an out-of-lore reason for this. The creative director of Halo 4, Josh Holmes, found out at the beginning of Halo 4's development that his mother had been diagnosed with dementia. And that affected the character development of Cortana. Quote, "Over the course of the production of the game, I watched her deteriorate as a human being and become someone I couldn't recognize," Holmes said. And that was really hard, but it was also an inspiration for me to want to tell a perfect story. For me, it was really important that we tell this story because this was the human heart of Halo 4's campaign. He added, "I was very adamant about wanting to deliver on that part of the story. Speaking from my own personal experiences, as many of you know, my mother died from cancer, a cancer that attacked and ate away at her brain. Watching that happen to another human being, watching the woman who raised you not even recognize you, not even know who you are, there are few things more devastating to live through that aren't outright horrors. It's why Halo 4 is such a hard game for me to go back to. My mom, she was a huge Halo fan. She read the books, she played the games, she did it to get closer to me and my brothers. And of course, her favorite character was Cortana, so that storytelling just really hits home for me. So by all intents and purposes, at least in my book, Josh Holmes accomplished his mission. Digressions aside, one of the curious things about Cortana's rampancy is where it's at in Halo 4.
I was put into service 8 years ago.
8 years.
AIs deteriorate after 7, Chief.
Halo 4 takes place 4 years after Halo 3. In between Halo 2 and 3, for over a month, Cortana was subjected to the Logic Plague. To put that into perspective, every AI that has endured the Logic Plague has turned to the Flood's cause, and the Didact was driven insane because of it. In actually a very similar way to Cortana, and I have a feeling it's no coincidence that they give identical speeches.
Our strength is a luminous sun,
toward which all intelligence may blossom, and the impervious shelter
beneath which it has prospered.
As I've already stated, Cortana's personality in Halo 5 is a lot more like her Halo Legends personality, a personality that manifests obviously before the events of Halo 4. During the last mission of Halo 4, the player is tasked with reaching the Didact and stopping him or destroying the Composer. However, there's a problem. The Didact is protected by a shield. In order to lower this shield, Cortana comes up with a plan. Her plan is to eject all of her rampant personality spikes in the hope that doing so at each of the terminals will overload them and bring down the Didact's shield. In all, she creates 14 different fragments. And after we beat the Didact, Cortana says this.
I'm not coming with you this time.
What?
Most of me is down there. I only held enough back to get you off the ship.
No. That's not... We go together.
It's already done.
You'll also note that the fragment of Cortana that stays back is the prominent Halo 4 personality, which is notably different than the personality that Cortana has in Halo 1, 2, 3, and Halo Legends. Now we know that a portion of Cortana survives this and travels to the domain where her rampancy is fixed. This fix also makes her immortal.
The cure for rampancy I've found means AIs can be immortal.
In Halo 4, we know that Cortana was fragmented, that those fragments had different personalities.
I just can't stop them. Like 1,000 of me arguing all at once.
And we know that Cortana was involved in a slipspace accident just over Earth caused by an explosion. Oh, did you miss that?
Activity! Significant slipspace event building under the composer. Most of me is down there.
After I saw John last, I was pulled into slipspace. That's where I found access to the domain.
For those of you keeping track, the last time the Halo 5 Cortana could have seen John was on the light bridge before the explosion, as it's already been established that each of the 14 different Cortana have different personalities, and the one that we see at the end of Halo 5 is likely dead and couldn't be one of the fragments that was thrown through slipspace during the explosion. We also know that in the Halo comic Halo Escalation, after the Didact fell from the light bridge into the orange vortex of death, he was transported to Gamma Halo, where he survived until Blue Team arrived and got part of a halo dropped on him. This also might not be the last we see of the Didact, as there is Halo 5 concept art that depicts him, and I can't overstate the importance of this concept art because it might hold the key to Halo Infinite's plot. But first, back to Cortana. We know that not only was the Didact teleported through the slipspace rupture, but clearly and quite obviously, at least one of Cortana's 14 fragments was as well, the one that we see in Halo 5. And if one fragment of Cortana was sent through slipspace to a different location, what's to say more weren't as well? What's to say one didn't go to Zeta Halo, or the Ark, or because we know from ILOVEBEES that AI can be sent back through time, how about back to 1999? And retroactively, the quite frankly rampant sounding Cortana from the Cortana letters is in fact one of these 14 fragments as well. Again, just like in ILOVEBEES. If you compare the two, we see a lot of the same pieces in play. A compromised AI surviving a catastrophic explosion that's also connected to slipspace. I don't think it's all that far-fetched to point out that the air-quote death of Cortana in Halo 4 had a lot of the same parallels as the fragmentation of Melissa during the ILOVEBEES story. So, what if the Cortana we see in Halo 5 isn't our Cortana? Not completely. What if, say, she's just one of many pieces? For example, she could be the broken off piece that we had to return in Halo Reach. Or, she could be a fragment that was infected by the Logic Plague. There's really no right or wrong answer to which piece this Cortana is. One, because AI shouldn't work that way, but it's really an easy way to demonstrate what I'm talking about. And two, we know that Cortana is fragmented in Halo Infinite, and that will be a plot point.
This is part of me. I don't know why. I don't know how, but it is me.
So, given what we know from Halo Infinite, which is very little, and what that means for the greater canon, the conversation around it inevitably devolves to why? This question is why I've been sitting on this video script for almost half a year now. In Halo 5, Cortana makes it pretty clear in no uncertain terms that she can no longer be trusted. So why would humanity, why would John, partner back up with her? Halo 4 has us lose Cortana and stop the Didact. In Halo Escalation, we see the Didact survives, but is promptly killed. Except, that might not be the case. Recently, Halo 5 concept art was released depicting the Didact as broken and damaged. This would be after he was jettisoned into a planet's atmosphere from a section of Gamma Halo. Now, concept art is always tricky. Sometimes artists just create things because it's cool to create things. like some of the other concept art for some of the alien races in Halo 5. And given that the concept art for the Didact is nothing more than a sketch, it's extremely hard to say how far this went. However, the Didact has always seemed like a waste of a character. I mean, it really doesn't make a lot of sense that 343 went through all the effort to build this character up with the Halo Forerunner saga, only to, what, kill him off in a comic book? As the Halo universe stands, there's only a handful of threats that would be large enough to really justify Master Chief allying himself with Cortana. Cortana is one of those threats, the Flood, and the Didact. Some of you might be quick to point out the Banished or any of the remaining Covenant factions, but they're really not a threat, and they're definitely not narratively consistent with the main Halo Reclaimer saga theme. Of the remaining options, you don't really need to tell a story about the Flood to reintroduce the Flood. We know that there are Flood-infested planets out there. We know that there's Flood on different installations. We know that the Flood are out there, and that at any point, they can start popping off again. On top of that, as Lovecraftian and as terrifying as the Flood are, in our current era, they've yet to pose much of a legitimate threat. The Flood are kind of funny that way. Sure, an outbreak could happen on a Halo, but blow up the Halo and you're fine. The Flood are only terrifying when they get to the level of development that they were at during the Flood Forerunner War. So short of Deus Ex Flood fleet coming out of nowhere, they're not really a threat at this point. So the last two options leave Cortana herself and the Didact. The Cortana option works, but it's rather anticlimactic. What, we sail around the known universe looking for Cortana fragments so we can recompile them, so we can somehow reintroduce them to the big bad evil Cortana? And then what? She maybe realizes the error of her ways and removes the gun from the universe's head, only to what? Hand it over to humanity, the true Reclaimers, who now control the single most powerful cache of Forerunner technology in existence? So basically, back to where we started the game, only with humanity in control instead of Cortana. Sure, they could have a Deus Ex Flood incursion that sets up for the next game, but again, that's just kind of anticlimactic, and honestly kind of more of the same. Then there's the possibility that I like, the Didact. The Didact in lore has been a parallel to Master Chief since well before Halo 4, and you could almost mirror the Didact and the Librarian with Master Chief and Cortana. So what if at the beginning of Halo Infinite, the Didact returns? I mean, where would the Warden Eternal's loyalties lie, with Cortana or with the Didact? Throughout Halo 5, it's shown that the Warden Eternal doesn't like humanity one bit.
Humans now. In a galaxy defined by peace, humans were the animals that brought chaos and blood.
We also start to see his disillusion with Cortana.
I assume that although humans were your creators, you have thrown off the shackles of emotion. Your affection for what was its family warriors, it blinds you to the truth.
We also know that the Warden Eternal can remove Cortana from the domain.
If I did not think you clever, Cortana, I would have burned you from the domain.
What stops him from doing that if the Didact returns? After all, I have to imagine that Forerunner overrules Reclaimer. Over the course of Halo 5, and in the 18 months between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite, Cortana has rallied a significant amount of Forerunner tech to her cause. Weapons, mostly the Guardians, the Halos, the Prometheans, all of these things are ready and posed to be a significant threat to all life in existence should the Didact return and reclaim it. This would categorically be a big enough threat to logically force John and Cortana to work together. Kinda like Master Chief and the Arbiter during the events of Halo 2. After all, the Arbiter killed billions of people because he thought he was right, and we give him a free pass. And along the way, they find Cortana's fragments and recompile her into a whole to turn Cortana back to who she was before her rampancy. Who knows? What I do know is Halo Infinite will at the very least have some sort of aspect of recompiling Cortana. For what reason, we can only guess. Is it to fight herself? Is it to fight the Flood? Is it to fight the Didact? Who knows? Well, I guess 343 knows, but that's about it. However it all goes down, I think we can all agree, we just hope it to be good. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Remember to leave a like if you like this sort of video. This was an enormous one. Subscribe for more Halo content in the future, stuff like this, breakdowns on the games, the greatest flexes in Halo lore, and feel free to donate to my Patreon. But above all else, stay frosty.